नमस्कार श्रीमंत हरदीप सिंह पुरी जी, श्री अमियो प्रभु जी, and all the creative people I can see, Mr. Jatin Das, Paresh Maiti, and Amarnath. So it's a beautiful platform, this AICE. I'm very happy that it's being launched, and we have a platform to convey and share our creative thoughts with the government. But I am grateful to my Indian government. I received Padma Shri in 1975 and Padma Bhushan in 1991 and Padma Vibhushan in 2001. This reminds me about my guru, my father, Ustad Hafiz Ali Khan Sahab, because many creative people, old-timers, when they meet Prime Minister or President, they didn't know what to talk and what to ask. In 1960, my father was receiving Padma Bhushan, and he took me along to Rashtrapati Bhavan. And that was the first time I saw Dr. Rajendra Prasad and Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. After the investiture ceremony, it's a ritual to have tea in Mughal Garden. Nowadays, they don't invite us. But that time, Mr. Nehru came up to my father. Khan Sahab, कोई तकलीफ तो नहीं है आपको? तकलीफ बहुत थी. My father said, नहीं आप राग दरबारी की प्योरिटी को बचाइए. I was feeling embarrassed कि ये क्या बोल रहे हैं और किसको बोल रहे हैं, उनको क्या पता दरबारी कानड़ा क्या होता है. कहने खान साहब मैं समझा नहीं. कहते ये राग मियाँ तानसेन ने बनाया था. पीपल आर टेकिंग लिबर्टी और आप प्रेसिडेंट हो, आपकी ड्यूटी है कि राग की प्योरिटी को बचाइए. तो इतने इनोसेंट कलाकार, they came to this planet, just they were committed to purity of music and purity of rag. Then Mr. Nehru came up to my father, Khan Sahab, क्या सेवा करूं, कोई तकलीफ तो नहीं है. He looked at me, कहने खान साहब बच्चे से कोई गुरु मंत्र तो नहीं छुपा रहे आप. तो अब्बा ने कहा नहीं मैं कोशिश कर रहा हूँ इनको सब कुछ देने की. And he was one track mind. He was not aware about the protocol also, that you can't leave before the president. He started walking. नेहरू साहब बोले खान साहब मैं और क्या सेवा करूं. कहते हैं मेरे नमाज का वक्त हो गया है, मैं इजाज़त चाहता हूं. वो निकल पड़े वहाँ से. तो कोई सिक्योरिटी वाले ने उनको रोका नहीं. घर में आके हमारी माता जी को पद्म भूषण की कहानी नहीं बताई. कहते हैं राजेंद्र बाबू ने वायदा कराया कि दरबारी की प्योरिटी बची रहेगी. So such creative people came to this planet, but I think we need to have some kind of meeting with our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. I would like to appeal to Mr. Puri to arrange such kind of meeting where all the creative people could meet Mr. Modi and we could share our thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You spoke briefly, but very interesting, very engaging, and some very, very important points and takeaways for all of us. It's my pleasure now to request our chief guest to please launch AIICE. Can we? And I request everybody on the dais to please join Honorable Minister for the launch of AIICE. It's a formal launch. Mr. Jindal, reverse. Okay. Thank you. It's my pleasure now to request our Honorable Chief Guest to please share his thoughts with us.
Ustad Amjad Ali Khan ji, Shri Rajiv Sethi ji, Srimati Rakhi Sarkar ji, Shri Ameya Prabhu ji, Shri Anant Padmanabhan ji, Srimati Miss Sunita Shankar ji, esteemed dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. I must confess, I can't recall any event of this kind which has such a saturation of contributors to our creative economy and also those who have benefited by the dynamism of our creative economy. So let me start by congratulating the Indian Chamber of Commerce, and let me start by congratulating whoever conceptualized the need for an All India initiative on creative economy. I suspect I was sitting next to that person, so let me start by warmly complimenting you for taking this initiative. As I said, I can't recall of any event where so many eminent contributors to our creative economy are around. I see people, my friends of the last 50 years who've contributed in so many different ways, in music, in the world of painting. I see two of them sitting right up front here. My classmate is here. I mean, I find it very difficult to describe him, but you know, there's so much, they've done so much for the creative economy. I must also confess that from the time that I served in Geneva as India's permanent representative, and I was accredited to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, and that I believe is the international organization which has done more in terms of focusing on the creative economy globally than any other institution or multilateral body I can think of. So let me start by quoting to you from the UNCTAD's Global Survey, Creative Economy Outlook 2024. According to this assessment, which I think is both realistic and I think has a wide coverage, because whenever you talk about the creative economy, the concept itself is evolving. What you and I may regard as the canvas of creative economy today may not be so tomorrow. Different segments get covered. But according to the UNCTAD's Creative Economy Outlook 2024, the figure is that the creative economy globally generates annual revenues of US $2 trillion and accounts for nearly 50 million jobs worldwide. Now, anyone even remotely familiar with these figures would know that $2 trillion is a fair amount of money. And if it generates 50 million jobs, that is also quite substantive. I benefited greatly from the brief statements we had this afternoon. There was a point which I think my friend Rajiv Sethi ji was making, which requires a little more elaboration. He talked about some sections of the Indian creative economy, if I understood it correctly, is not unorganized, but it is indifferently organized, self-organized. That's which is largely true. And I think some of the add-ons to the creative economy in the Indian context can be covered by that. Therefore, I'm not entirely sure that the figures that I use when we have a discussion on the creative economy, whether that figure actually fully captures the extent of the creative economy in India. And the figure I use is, thanks to the Indian Chamber of Commerce, is that in India today is a $30 billion industry and is responsible for the employment of 8% of India's working population. The 30 billion figure I don't have much doubt with, but I do have a certain curiosity. I'm not saying I have a doubt. I have a certain curiosity to find out when we estimate the extent of the Indian creative economy, whether we are able to take into account all the artisans, all the people at the disaggregated sector who actually contribute to that. And that's a discussion I think which is worth having, because ever so often discussions on employment get so badly distorted to start focusing on formal employment that we miss the essence and the, I would say, the richness and dynamism of the creative economy in its entirety. An increasing number of increasing number of Indians, especially youth, believe creative industries to be more appealing while also offering career security. Now that's an important point, because the stereotype used to be that if you want security in life, then you go for formal employment. Aman and I attended the same class. We used to be together in the university, and sometimes when I look back at my career, 39 years in the Foreign Service and 6 years international think tanking, and my 8th year as a minister now, and I was wondering who derives more satisfaction. But that's a debate we can have separately, because there is something about the creative industry in terms of contribution. I'm not saying other professions don't contribute. Certainly, I'm not going to admit that I don't contribute. I mean, I do. But whether it's Central Vista or a new parliament, that's a different discussion to have. But what I'm finding is that creative occupations also now, and this is the good point, pay about 88% higher than their counterparts in the formal employment. Now that to me is an incentivizing factor. Because if you look at the creative exports increasing by 20% last year alone, they generated $11 billion. But that is not, those are figures. At the end of the day, young people who have the latent talent which they can utilize, if they consciously opt for the creative industry. And here I see many, we had Anand speaking about the book publishing industry. I've been at the periphery involved with them. I see another very successful publisher sitting here. But today, I wouldn't worry about the economics of an individual industry, because that may have nothing to do with the creative industry per se. I mean, it so happens today that there are fundamental changes taking place in the world of content creation. I mean, I hope there are no journalists around here from the print media, because we might soon have to start referring to them in the past tense. And then we thought the electronic media has taken over, and I'm sorry to have to say this, I have a friend sitting right up. Well, even the television, the way it's proceeding now, is being, I'm not saying eclipsed, but if you look at the content creators who are on YouTube, who are etc., and if you look at their individual following, it's a very, very revealing and a new figure that's coming up. I meet young people in different parts of India in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and if you look at what kind of following they have, it's an education, because I think that world is also changing. You look at Bollywood, other local film industries in India, no other country produces as many films annually as India does. Film industry employs more than 7.4 lakh people, and it is not only the tangible impact that counts, Bollywood is perhaps also one of India's most well-known soft power exports. I had, when I received a message from my friend of many years when I was outside the country that they would like to invite me here, I started doing a little bit of reading before I accepted this invitation. And I came to the interesting conclusion that, and this is part of what I found, that a report by Goldman Sachs in August 2023 described the global economy, the global creator economy, as set to nearly double to $480 billion by 2027. India is positioned, now I'm talking about, this is the figure on India which I found remarkable. It has 100 million content creators in India, making India the content capital of the world. Now, if I were to make a statement to that effect that India is a content capital of the world, most of you would say that this is part of a certain hype that, government ministers periodically indulge in. I never go down that road, but it's a Goldman Sachs report. Now, I have some experience in urban affairs. I was the Housing and Urban Affairs Minister for 7 years. And I look at some of the figures in that area, some of the newer developments taking place. And I come back to, again, this time a McKinsey study, which about 3 or 4 years ago said that India was producing or building, producing is not the correct word, between 700 and 900 million square feet of urban space, square meters is it, of urban space every year, which is the equivalent of a Chicago. Every year. And that's going to happen till 2030. That perhaps explains some of the urban chaos, because, when you have demographic shifts of population taking place from the rural and semi-rural to the semi-urban and urban, well, and our experience of something that happened in 1975 tells us you can't uproot people and relocate them for obvious reasons. So we have a lot of in-situ slum rehabilitation taking place. I don't like the use of the word slums. I call them the informal economies, which is the correct word. But there again, if you see the quotient or the component of the creative economy there, it is mind-boggling. Because today we are not just talking about what kind of creative content you are producing in large urban cities or the megapolises you're talking about tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Now, for you to be able to capture that, I think this is something that if you were to have, Mrs. Sarkar, not a one session like this, but a real seminar, I think it would be very useful to go into those areas to capture the full and comprehensive scale of what is happening in the creative economy in this country. And I said you can use any number of indices where you can talk about the performing arts, creative economy in terms of painting, publishing, the works. And I think maybe it's the atmosphere here which enthuses me, but I think the best is yet to come. And I think that is the positive message I take away from such an initiative. We need to have a robust regulatory framework that steers, because I'm jumping, because today a key driver of the change is AI. And AI is widely used in newsrooms, with 41% of news teams employing it to create illustrative art, 39% for social media content, and 38% for writing and generating articles. And I found these figures, when I looked at them, a little surprising. But I've just spent 10 days in New York, and I can tell you the kind of use of AI and ChatGPT. I mean, I'm not going into the good or bad of it, but I think you need a regulatory framework, because otherwise you're going to be taken for a massive ride in this. And it will, we've had some discussions at the policy level, but I think going forward, all of you need to apply your minds, and the gathering of such eminence needs to also reflect on how you see this working out. I know some of you creative artists and professionals see AI as an existential threat, but let me assure you that whatever threat it is, we need to build safeguards. And I think those safeguards are in everybody's mind, but what we need to do is to utilize this huge opportunity, which will also end up lowering costs and go down that way. And the robust regulatory framework that we need that steers the use of AI and prevents misinformation, and then you come into copyright issues, intellectual property issues, there are privacy concerns, and of course there are issues of market monopolization which also come in. I can assure you that my colleagues in the government are not only focusing on these things, but are actively looking at ways and means of taking this conversation further. I've already taken far longer than I had intended to, so let me conclude by once again thanking the Chamber of Commerce and all of you who, utilizing the platform of the Chamber of Commerce, have taken this initiative on the creative industry. I have always believed that given India's dominance as content creators, I'm surprised that although individual sectors are doing well, creative, the performing arts, painting, literature, I mean, all other areas are doing well. Somehow we've not had a comprehensive discussion on this, in the manner in which this was conceptualized at the multilateral level. And I'm reporting, I know when Lakshmi was the director of the Division on International Trade in Goods and Services in UNCTAD, that's when this work really actually began also. So I have been, doing, and I would personally, I mean, my portfolio in energy leaves me very little time, but I was something that I would personally want to focus on also in the coming time. So thank you very much, and I think it's a great initiative, and as I said, I think the best is yet to come. But I'm going to also seek your indulgence. I have to run because I have a meeting to catch up. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, highly encouraging.